everyone, Bethany here, and welcome to my channel. Today I am joining the Not Too Shabby Christmas in July, and well, Christmas is my favorite holiday, so I was like, yes, please, let's do this. So I pulled out the old Stamp and Die set from last year sometime. Don't ask me which month it was, but this is Winter Vibes, and it is the die that we are actually going to start focusing on first. And so I'm just using some things. I don't know if they're in the store right now, but you should check it out and see if they are. And if not, ask Jamie, and I'm sure she can tell you if they'll get ordered again. But let's go ahead and dive on in. So I am going to take out the Stamp and Die set, and I'm just going to take the Christmas tree out of the set. I have selected a few versions of cardstock. I have a shimmery silver here, a glitter white, a vellum, and a metallic. So I'm going to cut off screen on my Cuttlebug using the die. And now that I have all four papers with 3 trees each, I love how they look. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in and show you what we're going to do with just the card base. It is an A7 size card base. Quick story, I never actually sent out Christmas cards last year because I realized all my ready-made Christmas cards were A2 size, and I wanted to send photos with my cards. And since they didn't fit, I promised myself eventually I would create some A7 size cards and send them with these photos that I did actually print at the printers. And I will eventually send them out. Probably Christmas in July. We shall see. Or I will just send out the photo from last year and the photo from this year. We'll see. I'm making 0 promises because life is life and it is unpredictable. I am going to use a blending brush, Icy Mist from the color Hive ink set, and I'm just blending a light layer of color. I'm not doing a whole lot. I'm just wanting a hint of blue. This one's going to be my overall color, and then I'm going to use a little bit deeper color next in a moment, and you'll see it. But I wanted to just create a whimsical scene without doing a whole lot of effort. And if you're like me and get a few smudges, just rub vigorously, which will also make my camera jiggle a little bit. But you can kind of smudge it a little bit by adding a little bit more color, texture, etc., etc. Sometimes I get too aggressive in my blending and forget to actually be gentle. It's as if I'm trying to use a blending brush as if it were a paintbrush. But I've decided to just embrace that cloudy look because I'm also going to be using another color right on top of it. So I'm okay with the little uneven blending. And it's going to just add to a painted look background, which is kind of nice. I used to do scene building in theater, and we would do that sometimes on purpose, just have splotches to create a specific effect. So I'm embracing my mistakes, and you'll see why I'm going to fix it in a moment. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch to the muscle color. And I want a lot of this to start, but I'm going to blend off on my glass mat, then bring it in. It's a poppier color than the Icy Mist. The Icy Mist is a little more subtle, so I definitely want to have a little bit blended off screen or off on my glass mat first before I start bringing it in. Otherwise, it could potentially overpower. And see how it's blending down some of those brush marks from the Icy Mist. Still keeping a little bit of it there, but it's not as drastic. It's a little more subtle, which is kind of nice. It's a little more artistic like that. But I really like having that darker edge right on the border of the entire paper or the front, card front. And then I'm going to just let some of the leftovers come into the middle with me, just so I don't have too much white. But it kind of looks like a vignette of a winter scene, at least the beginnings of it. So I'm going to let it dry, but before it dries completely, I'm going to show you one trick. If you have any color or any water reactive inks, this is a perfect technique to use. So I have here, it is a squirt bottle, spray bottle from the Dollar Tree, and I am going to open up my card, and at an angle I'm going to spray a little mist. 2 is perfect for what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to clean off the glass mat because I don't want to warp my card with oversaturation. And then I'm going to take the same microfiber towel, it's my junky towel, and I'm just going to dab up some of those splotches. So when you have a water reactive ink, what can happen is when you spray water on it, you can get these little dots. Or if you want to do drips, you can do the same concept. I'm going to do one more round of spritzing just to deepen that look a little bit more. Let it saturate in the card while I wipe off the mat, and then press and press, and wow. Yeah, that is pretty awesome. So it's basically creating this wintry mix that will happen around the scene that we're going to build with the trees. So now I'm going to go ahead and just play with arrangement. I don't have a specific, this is how I wanted it arranged. I just am going to layer until I find something that's visually a definite, this is what I want. I don't want necessarily the same cardstock right on top of each other, so I'm trying to be mindful of that as I do this. And then once I'm satisfied, because I want them all to be clumped together, I'm going to go ahead and just start layering by using standard Barely Art glue. And because I don't have any special vellum glue or tape currently, I'm just going to make sure that my pattern is appealing, that it's not super wonky. Using the Barely Art glue, I can be totally honest and say I have never used it for vellum before. So this is an experiment, and it's so far just on pressing. It just looks like there's a little bit of dimension to it, so I'm totally okay with it. So I'm going to speed through the gluing of everything, but you'll get the gist of how I'm placing stuff. I'm going to do basically 2 behind, 1 in front, and then crisscrossing layers. I want to keep the tree line all on the same level, so it's not super drastic, but I'm going to do 1 group on each end first. That way I have an anchoring, so no matter what happens in the middle, I have my ends definitely in the right spot, if that makes any sense. And it's just a way for me to make sure I like what I've done. I'm trying to give each tree their moment in the front, although the vellum I don't think I'm going to put in front solidly. I'm going to always have that as a back layer or a side layer, not necessarily as a front layer. I don't think seeing the other trees through the vellum would look or read as well. And when you're gluing this many items, you want to make sure you're not doing too much glue. The reason being is too much glue will start to warp your card base, especially because I am doing most of the work here directly on the card base. I really do actually like the way that the Barely Art glue responds to working with gluing vellum. So there, now you have my honest review of a glue. It's kind of nice because I am looking for that whimsical look. So the hardest part though is not being able to press in between layers or in between layer placement. So I'm noticing that I have to tap things down a little bit more and potentially go back later and reglue if anything comes up too far for my liking. And I had a little glue mishap over here. So I'm just going to wipe it up, and then I'll use my microfiber rag to really wipe it up in a little bit. Alright, once I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to take one of my Cuttlebug acrylic blocks and give some good pressure, add some things on top, and I will clean up a little bit and be right back. I've set the card off to the side to finish drying, but in the meantime, I am going to stamp out my sentiment. Cozy winter vibes. I really like this one. My second favorite is the Let It Snow. I had a really hard time picking which one, so I just went with the one that made most sense first. I may just go ahead and stamp both out because I like them both. And I've gone ahead and grabbed a 65-pound cardstock. I like to use 65-pound cardstock for my sentiments because they seem to layer better, but you want always to have your card base be a little bit thicker and heavier. My favorite go-to is the Neenah 110-pound cardstock, and going to go ahead and pick these up. Tried to get as much of the manufacturer oil off of them. Even though I've used this stamp set before, somehow I have not used these specific sentiments, which is so unlike me. But then again, I do probably have a good 50 or so, maybe more, just Christmas and winter stamp sets, so I may or may not have missed these. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a really good press. I'm going to use a smoosher. I am using the Maker Forte Color Hive Remarkable Eclipse black ink. Then once that is stamped out and ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and throw it through my Cuddle Bug using the dies from the set. So I just finished die cutting these and I still can't choose which one I want. So first, before I decide, I'm going to actually put what's left over on that brush and just tint down the white a little bit. It's just to give a hair of mystique more closely to the edges because the edges are going to catch more of that ink than, say, the middle. And it's just to give it a little whimsy, and I'll even zoom in here for a second so you can see what I mean by the whimsy. When I darken my light setting, you can see it, how it's just dark on the edges and it's caught a little bit of that leftover ink. It's also turning my nails blue, but we'll fix that with some hand sanitizer in a moment. That is my tip. If you ever get ink, at least water reactive ink, in unwanted places and it's not coming out with just soap and water, use some hand sanitizer. It works faster and probably easier to do. So yeah, now you can see that concept. So I'm going to zoom back out and darken everything back, or lighten everything back up so you can actually see the project itself. But now you can see why I have a hard time deciding which one. There's so much extra space here that it needs a little bit more pizzazz. So decision one is I'm going to just use both. So I'm going to go ahead and glue them down really quickly before I change my mind. I'm going to commit to this slightly unconventional idea, and I'm going to place it nicely on that silvery part, trying to make it as lined up as possible with so it doesn't seem like it's off kilter. And the R seems to need a little extra glue because it's going onto a different layer. So I'm going to put an extra thick part of the glue in hopes that it will stick better. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the Let It Snow in the central portion of that lighter coloring. And I'm going to put it under the block again to dry briefly. So in the time that it took for me to get the blue off my fingers, that's the time it took to dry. That's why I love Barely Art glue, or one of the many reasons, is because it doesn't take hardly any time whatsoever to dry. And putting it under that block also took out some of the warping that was happening with the vellum as it was drying. It did start to warp a little bit, so that was helpful as well. Now, one last little thing that we're going to add. I'm going to add little drops of this light blue glitter glue Stickles from Ranger, and it is, don't mind the outside of it, my littles, when I got this shipment in, they decided to have fun and eliminate all of the glitter out of my Stickles. And if your Stickles ever get clogged, just stick a pin. I usually just use my glue pin from Miss Gloria, and I go ahead and get the flow going. Sometimes I'll even do it on the mat, and I'm just going to do little dots, but it's going to just add a hair. I'm going to try not to drop it too high, but I also don't really want them to be all the same size. So I'm being a little bit more playful with the sizing, just kind of how my splatters are different sizes. And I'm going to keep about the half inch around to let it snow clear, give or take, just trying to add more of that vignette look. Keep the let it snow the focus, and then making sure I'm checking the other side, making sure that there's a good balance, that I don't feel like one side has more than the other. This is just another easy way, fast way to elevate the look without a whole lot of effort. That's what I'm all about, especially during the holidays. Even though, yes, it is July and I'm getting a head start, you can see when I zoom in here how it's really just made the whole scene pop a little bit more than it did before. And it really took me all of what, a minute and a half to put down. So that is how that one looks. Thank you all for joining the hop today. I really hope you enjoyed the easy, fast techniques that I used in this tutorial, and I hope you get inspired to start making Christmas cards in July. My goal is that if I start in July, that by October I'll have all of my Christmas cards made, because by November I have generally all of my Christmas gifts bought. So I'm trying to bring my timeline up a little bit faster this year, and to make sure that I have cards that will fit the beautiful photos I like to share with my family as well. Don't forget to check down below for the links to the rest of the hop, as well as the links to the shop, and any supplies that I used I should have listed down below as well. Don't forget to find the joy in your day, and happy making. Bye everyone!